These guys are the absolute worst. This is Rusich, a Russian private military company with an extensive track record of war crimes, everything from murder to torture, mutilation, and more. Now, today we're going to get into who this group is and some of the things that they're responsible for, but be warned, this is nasty stuff. I'm not going to show any of the gruesome pictures or videos, but even talking through this could be triggering for some, so please proceed with caution. Now, Rusich is also known as the Sabotage Assault Reconnaissance Group. It's a Russian far-right neo-Nazi paramilitary group, which at times in recent years has fought alongside the Russian military in Ukraine. Now, I wish I could in this video say that this is very clearly a portion of the Russian military, but the way that Rusich and other PMCs have been organized in Russia is to make it very confusing as to the exact relationship between the state and these paramilitary organizations, and Rusich is no different. So they do have vague ties to the Russian government. At the very least, I would say they have access to and have used some Russian military training sites. They've used Russian military transport and have access to a variety of heavy weaponry that could really only be provided by the Russian Ministry of Defense. So there are connections there. However, it's not accurate to say that this is necessarily a branch of the Russian military. Now, I'm going to briefly go over the leadership of the organization to give you an idea of kind of their ideology. And there's no better place to start here than with Alexei Milchikov, the current commander of the Rusich Group. A little of Milchikov's background: in 2007, he joined the DPNI, which stands for the Movement Against Illegal Immigration, a group that Russia actually declared an extremist organization and banned in 2011. To give you an idea of that organization, they gave a speech back in 2007 saying, quote, "We will free Europe. Russia will be white." So you kind of see, the direction this is headed. In 2009, then Milchikov helped found the Rusich Group, and in 2014 first saw combat when they deployed to the eastern portions of Ukraine. And a little more on Milchikov's ideology that he has now imparted to Rusich. In a video from 2020, he described himself by stating, quote, "I'm not going to go deep and say that I'm a nationalist, a patriot, an imperialist, and so forth. I'll say it outright. I'm a Nazi." So, from his own words, the leader of the Rusich Group calling himself a Nazi. Now, there are two other key figures in the Rusich organization that we're not going to spend as much time on today. Jan Petrovsky was a former deputy commander underneath Milchikov, who has been detained in Finland for traveling under a false passport and is currently being held there pending charges of war crimes. And then Razkazov Eduardovich, there's not a lot of information about this guy. Apparently he was more active in Rusich up until 2022, but since then he seems to have really fallen off the radar. Both, however, all three are sanctioned by the United States, the European Union, and others. Now, diving into their operations here, in their very short history already, this group has not been around for a long time. They've really earned a reputation for gruesome brutality and kind of blatant disregard for human life. The most notable recent event here that might be in some of your all's memory was in April of 2023 when Rusich posted a video to their Telegram channel which showed a captured Ukrainian soldier being beheaded. In the clip, a uniformed man with a yellow armband, signifying that he was a member of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, can be seen on the ground screaming, quote, "It hurts," as another uniformed man wearing a white band on his leg, a marking of the Russian military, white or red for Russia, blue or yellow for Ukraine, kneels over him and cuts his head with a knife. Quote, "Cut it," a voice behind the camera is heard on the video. "Break his spine. Haven't you cut heads off before? Finish the job," the voice continues. At the end of the minute-and-a-half video, the voice is heard instructing the soldier to display the severed head on camera and place it in a bag to, quote, "send it to the commander." Now, I should note that Rusich posted this video to their Telegram channel with some smiley face emojis saying there is more of this to come. They were celebrating this event. However, they never formally claimed responsibility. There's an investigation ongoing that appears to have not been completed at this point because the war is still very much active. There are a lot of fingers inside of Ukraine pointing at Wagner and or Rusich for carrying out this gruesome beheading earlier in the war. Unfortunately, with Rusich, it only gets worse from there. In 2017, Rusich had deployed to Syria, as many of these Russian PMCs do, with the overall mission of guarding oil and gas infrastructure owned by Russian companies. While they're in Syria, the Rusich Group happily posted to their social media channels photos from Palmyra where they pose in front of the ruins with some weird hand gestures that I could swear I've seen somewhere before throughout history. Now, while in Syria, the Rusich Group faced accusations of involvement in the torture and murder of a Syrian national called Hamdi Bouta. A video was circulated online in 2017 showing 5 to 7 Russian-speaking men beating Hamdi with a sledgehammer, setting him on fire, and eventually cutting off his head and holding it up for pictures like it's some sort of trophy. Hamdi had, to give you an idea of what this man was guilty of, if that term is even appropriate here, what he was being accused of is probably the better way to say it. Hamdi had fled Syria earlier in the war for Lebanon before returning in 2017, after which he was arrested by Syria and forcibly conscripted into the Syrian military. He apparently deserted from the Syrian military, not wanting to fight, arguably one of the reasons he left the country in the first place. And that act of deserting the Syrian military led the Rusich Group and the Russians to label him as a jihadist. And then, of course, we have in the video between the sledgehammer, the fire, and the beheading showing what they do to jihadists, apparently. Now, you might think that this is something that they would try to cover up and bury and not highlight. You'd be wrong. They are proud of this. They commemorated this event. Rusich went on to sell patches and T-shirts highlighting this event in Syria from 2017. And unfortunately, if we go back to 2014, you can really see where the evil in this organization that is Rusich first came to light. In 2014, during the initial phases of the Russian war in Ukraine, Rusich did take part in the Donbass. On September 5th, 2014, in Luhansk, Russian Rusich forces ambushed a column of Ukrainian fighters from the Idar battalion. Now, this took place during a truce that had been agreed upon. And the Rusich Group actually took over a position at an abandoned Ukrainian roadblock, hoisted a Ukrainian flag behind the roadblock, and as the Idar battalion approached, just walking like they weren't in a war zone because it's a truce, as they came close, Rusich opened fire, apparently killing between 20 and 29 of these soldiers in the ensuing conflict. That alone, if we stop there, there's multiple war crimes being committed in that act, but that's not even close to the worst of what Rusich did here. Now, following the ambush, Ivan Isik, a member of the Idar battalion who had been captured, was filmed with a kolovrat symbol carved into his cheek. The kolovrat is the symbol that Rusich uses on their logo. Captured by Rusich fighters with their logo shortly thereafter carved into his cheek. Several days later, footage emerged showing Isaac being interviewed by a British/Russian journalist, if you will, maybe use that term loosely here, Graham Phillips, in a hospital. And the interview was difficult to get through, as you could see that Isaac had burns covering something like 70% of his body while he's still in Rusich captivity. And apparently Rusich, after capturing him and carving their logo in his cheek, had set him on fire after taking him prisoner. Then just a few days after the interview, Isaac, while he's in Rusich captivity, mind you, in the hospital, he was abducted and murdered. And when his body was found, an autopsy revealed that his internal organs had been cut out and stuffed back inside of his body, with fragments of his brain found inside of his stomach. It was events like this that led the leaders of the organization, Milchikov, Petrovsky, and Razakov, to be sanctioned by the United States, the European Union, and multiple other countries around the world. Now, as of this recording, Rusich is still an active private military company working for and alongside the Russian government. Now, as of today, it doesn't look like they're directly involved in the war in Ukraine, but they do regularly show footage of their forces taking part in training camps, sometimes hosting events for Russian youth, and every so often celebrating things like the Bucha massacre, or saying that Russia should not take prisoners but shoot any Ukrainians that happen to surrender. Now, for all of these past actions, it's not clear, or at least it's not public, that Russia has taken any sort of action against the Rusich Group. So that's a quick background on this pretty brutal group right now fighting alongside Russian forces. I'll link their Telegram channel in the description below if you want to check that out. You can see all these things they say firsthand. It's right there, out in the open. They're proud of it. But that's it. That's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.